There you
All right.
are.
We got it.
Good, because I do not talk well just by myself.
Me neither.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I could talk about anything all day.
Yeah, I kind of figured that. um, so anyway, I was telling them when I started off the first time that I kind of wanted to talk to you about the military pay. I was on the DoD website and a couple of other military websites, and it talks about base pay, hazard pay, and all that other stuff. Also, about your medical and anyway, the whole schmear. So, if you want to kind of dive right into that and get that information out there.
That's a big pool to dive in, but I'll do my best and then just ask questions as we go along. I actually just dealt with the insurance, the medical coverage thing today as a civilian on the civilian
Oh no.
side. Getting a yeah, open enrollment for my boys for dental and vision. It's a lot different on the other side. But yeah, pay typically E1 through E5, which is private through sergeant. They typically live in the barracks, so they don't get their housing pay. There's three pays you can get: your base pay, which is based off of your rank and how long you've been in. Then, like I just mentioned with the guys in the barracks, so there is housing and food, but if you live in the barracks and you eat at the chow hall, they withhold that, so you don't get it. You know what I mean? You're provided housing and provided food. Now, when you get promoted and get married, usually around Staff Sergeant E6 rank, then you are moved out of the barracks and you're given now your BAH, which is basic allowance for housing, and that's depending on where you're at. And then you're also now given meal rations. It's like $300 when I was in, I forget. But now since you're not eating the chow hall anymore, you're given money for food each month. So now you're getting base pay, money for house, money for food. Those are your three pay that you're getting just being in, right?
Right.
Um, and then medical coverage, man, I didn't realize how spoiled we were because both of my kids were born. Seriously, I'm still adjusting to the civilian world. Both of my kids born in military hospitals. Like we never even saw a bill. You don't see a bill for things when it's you and your spouse and kids. Same for the only time anything comes in, I think, is your spouse in dependents like medical or not medical, but dental down the road. Like if there's extensive dental, then you may have to pay just like a little bit extra, but that's taken out of your check. It's really not a big deal. But you don't pay for anything medically. It's crazy, you know. So those are your basic entitlements. We can go from there. What do you want to? Did that make sense? Questions?
Okay, that did make sense. Now, but you mentioned chow hall. Okay, I have looked at pictures of some of these chow halls, and they're not just a hall with chow. I mean, you're talking almost restaurant style at some of them.
Yeah, some that's accurate to say some of them, and then some of them the exact opposite. I've had both ends of the spectrum. There are a lot of variables with that, depending on what branch, where you're at, this and that. But I've been in some very nice ones. And it just popped in my head right now a memory because I remember thinking, even at the time, I think this was my first deployment to Iraq. We were staying on a big fob. Fob is like the base over there, forward operating base. So that's like inside the wire. That's where you're set up. That's home essentially. Some of them got pretty big by the time I got over there. And the chow hall, I mean, I just remember every time walking in. This is in Iraq, just it was the size of at least the football field, like the inside of it. No exaggeration. And you had numerous different lines you could get in because they're serving tons of people. It was like I
Right,
said, a
right.
big base. So there's hundreds and thousands of people, you know. But several main lines and speed line. That's normal in every chow hall. Main line is like your normal food. Maybe today it's roasted chicken, rice, green beans. Your speed line is like the kids' food: hamburgers, hot dogs, wings, chicken fingers, you know. But then over there, it was also you had your stir fry stations, which was one of my
Oh yeah,
favorites. I mean, legit, you had all these different things to pick from too. And I would just think, even back then, like, I wonder how much it costs to run this every day, you
really.
know. Um, Not to wrap. Oh yeah, it was just massive, and you're thinking just a daily operation because there's hundreds of people working there, which a lot of times is local nationals, people that live there that we just say, hey man, we're here for a while, come on in and do this, and we'll pay you. You know, so not to rabbit hole that anymore. Sorry, but um, Your food also, again, there's a lot of variables with it. For like when I was in the Marines, we would go out to the field a lot. So if you're out there, then you don't have chow holes. Basically, as long as you're provided 3 meals, which a lot of times could be 3 MREs a day, the meal ready to eat in the beige package, those things you would not believe how expensive each one is.
Well, I'm sure they are, because by the time you fix them and, either dry them or, however packaging that they have, there's got to be some expense to it.
They were back the last time I even saw it, they were like $12 a piece. And that was a few years
We
ago.
do have some questions on there.
Sure.
I noticed one said about paying for his son's medications while he was deployed, and another one was talking about medical while they were deployed. So do you kind of want to touch base on that?
As far as people claiming to have medical problems like overseas
Right.
somewhere, yeah. I almost feel like I'm back in my recruiter chair now because basically, well, here's an example. I missed my potentially last deployment in the Army. It was going to be to Africa. I was excited about it. One more place I hadn't seen on the globe, and then I was out. Long story with that, but as it approached, I got put on blood pressure medication, and that makes you, I forget the time, but it's like 90 days, so like 3 months automatic non-deployable status. If you're on certain medications, you can't even deploy. So if they're claiming over there, I don't know if you want to be more specific with some ailments that they're claiming, that might help. But as far as having these massive medical things over there and needing money for it, not at all, because half of those you're not even going to be allowed to deploy. And then if you are downrange or even overseas, OCONUS as we call it, then if something medically happens, you're going to be sent. Usually there's a real big one in Germany. I forget the name of it, but there's some big hubs. You know what I mean? You're going
Right.
to get pushed to those and then back over to the States very quick. There's no third party, you know what I mean, outside the military. There's no, you got to pay this, you got to do that. There's nothing at all like that.
Right. And of course, I know about the one in Germany because my ex-husband was stationed in Germany, and he kind of, told me a few things.
Yeah.
But I know if you're deployed, you're not going to go to the local hospital or the local doctor, and that local doctor or hospital is not going to contact anyone for you.
Correct. I mean, yeah. Again, any more specifics would help me, but again, if it's like deployment in Iraq, or Afghanistan. So I've been on real big fobs there where they have a lot of big built up medical care where they can do its categories, I think up to level 4 as to what they can do as far as just kind of like band-aids and stuff up to like surgery right there for something massive. And anytime would do any type of patrol or leaving or anything like that, we knew, hey, if something happens, this is the closest with, if there's this life, limb, or eyesight, basically medical incident, then we knew this was the first place we need to get because they have the ability to treat there until we get to Germany or something like that. You know where each one of those are and the level of care they can provide. So it's, like I said, it's all in house. There's no outside stuff. No, no.
Okay, I'm going to kind of read you this letter that email I saw from a doctor. I mean, doctor. It said, "Hello, it's Soldier Man Doctor reaching to you. This soldier man is affected seriously. We should not joke with these infection. He has been weak these days. He couldn't eat as much. His right feet swelling seriously. Your prayers kept him till alive, till now. Is very strong man. I was there with him today. He barely, and it's spelled like a bear, barely talk and running up to temperatures too much. I gave him vancomycin, which I assume is Tylenol, injection today. I hope it will suppress it, Mrs. Blank Blank. We will have to run this surgery soon before you loose this man. Do whatever you can do and save this man. Have a wonderful day ahead."
Who did that? Who was the recipient of this letter?
A victim. She was in a military romance scam. She's still in it, actually. And the doctor sent this email directly to her. The wording is so awful. I mean, that's kind of why I was laughing reading it to you, because it's bad. And yet it was still believed. But, they're asking her basically to send money before they can perform surgery. But I don't see how somebody can be weak, WEAKED these days and eat much. And then the next sentence they're saying, till now, very strong man. You know,
I, I, the best way I think I could express anything to that without sounding mean per se. Just another example, like yesterday, I don't know if you saw it or not, but the picture I posted, I think on Facebook and Instagram, the Veterans Day card that my
yeah,
10-year old, actually, I think he just turned 11, sorry, fifth grader. We'll go with that, right? And then he also did a project in school for you could do a dinner party and invite 5 people. Like, who would you invite to this fancy dinner party? You can pick all the stuff, blah blah, right?
right.
I was honored to make the list, which was sweet. Um, and then he was reading through what he had typed up to, like, this is why I invited each person. These are the hors d'oeuvres. This is the main course. This is dessert. This is how I'd handle the dinner party. And I'm reading this, and it's awesome because it's, I'm making me feel real cool. I'm proud. I'm humbled, that my kid's doing all this. But I'm reading because this has not been proofed in any form. I even asked him, like, nicely, because I'm holding back. I don't. It's hard to be a dad and then not point out errors. But my point is that his speech in that written form sounded exactly like that letter. Um, that's kind of how he read, you know what I mean? And then some of the words, I was impressed. I think comedian was one because he asked how I got to be such a good comedian, and the way that he spelled comedian, I'm not picking fun, but he doesn't know. So I used to do it too. You spell it how
Right.
it sounds, you know? And to him, that's how it sounded. And there was lots of those things in there, and the speech and the punctuation and stuff. And I asked him, like, has your teacher reviewed this? Because I almost want to help him edit it. Because, like, I don't want you to look dumb, dude. When somebody else reads this, of course, I didn't convey any of that. It was just all love, and I loved it so much. But my point is like, that's, if you receive anything like that from anyone that's supposed to be an adult and a professional, like a doctor, and that's how the language speaks on it, that's just a huge indicator in general that that's a farce, that's a ruse, that's not. Think about who. I'll always ask my kids when they tell me something, what's your source? You know what
Right.
I mean? I believe you. Trust but verify. I'm already teaching them that. You know what I mean? 5 and 10 years old at the time, like, hey, I trust you, but we're going to verify. Say that now. Think about the source of that doctor that wrote that letter. I don't know if my brain's different for working that way. I don't know if that makes sense. But if I'm reading something that sounds that way, because I like to read things out loud, whether it's something I'm writing. I learned that real early on because it helps you find a lot of mistakes when you're writing something out, when you got to read it and you're like, oh, that sounds dumb. So I don't know if that makes sense. I'll stop on that, but did that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, you would think somebody that is as highly educated as a doctor and that has to communicate via written form to even higher ups, especially if they're military.
Military and even foreign, like, I don't mean to profile or anything
No,
like
go
that, but
ahead.
most people, any foreign country that has achieved in fields like that, what I mean, success in fields like that, medical field, engineers, things like that, they take pride in being intelligent, and that comes across with how they speak, what they say, what they do. So they're going to know almost the English language as far as grammar and stuff better than anyone else, just because they take pride in that, in their professionalism and knowing the best in their field. Also, that's just how a lot of those people are driven. So to read a letter from a doctor that's like that, I would immediately say, what's going on?
Well, and soldier man, who
Yeah.
uses that phrase right there?
Unless you're talking smack up. What's up, soldier man?
Right, right. Okay.
And I'm trying not to be rude, you know what I mean? Because I don't know who, and you said she's still in the scam, you know what I mean? And that's the hard fight we have, especially those people that are in it and won't allow themselves to see the truth, because the dudes with the enemy can be good. They can get their hooks in deep, and it's hard to pull those roots out because they don't want to let them go. They don't want to let go of those roots that are coming in that give them that good feeling. Why would they let go of that? It's hard to
Right.
do.
And like I said, there's one lady on here that keeps mentioning something about he's in Iraq and medications. Um, Even deployed or in the U.S. or whatever country you're from, no matter what military, any medications are going to be provided by the military doctors, the military hospitals, or whatever. There
That's
was another one that also mentioned a social replacement fee, which we all know that is a scam for sure.
yeah. Uh, I can talk about replacements for a minute. That's funny. It's always
Yeah,
a good one. Um, as far as the service member themselves and all of their equipment, weapons, depending on where they're at, is the stuff that they're going to be signed for. You sign for stuff, and then you're now responsible for that government equipment and your government equipment as well. Um, if you say that you lose a weapon, you lose your gun. That's a huge deal, very big deal. Like that can shut the post down if that weapon's not found, type of stuff. I've been through those. It's a serious incident, and the last thing that soldier wants is anybody that doesn't need to know that he lost his weapon, that he lost his weapon. And there, you could potentially be charged for it, but it's a flipple, it's an investigation, it's this whole thing. But then at that point, if they've decided that you are at fault or owe money, they're just going to take it from you. And it's not unfamiliar to have what's called a no pay due. I don't know if you're familiar with that term. I haven't thought about it or said it in a while, but it's either for whatever. There's if you ran your military government card up, that money, you're going to get in big trouble. But two, they're just going to take it out of your
right.
pay. And if you owe them enough and you still owe them, you're going to get no money. It's called no pay due. It's not like you have to go out and get a loan or sell some stuff or borrow money from mom to pay for something that you lost or to pay for you to come back home and somebody else come over. That's not a thing.
Okay, yeah, that's what she's asking right there. Something about a form, need replacement soldier form so he could come home in December. This is not a thing. So,
No, not at all. Uh, Again, because the numbers, it's the military, it's the Army or the Navy or the Marines or the Air Force. They control everything that they own, and they own you when you're signed up, right? So they control the numbers. It's all, think bigger picture. They don't care necessarily. I mean, for that to sound bad, but the individuals wearing the boots, walking around doing this stuff, they don't necessarily care about that. It's a number. It's a part of a group, a bigger unit. So if there are casualties, things like that, it's happened before, so it's not like it's a new thing. Oh man, somebody went down, we need to replace them. No, these things happen, so they have a contingency for that. If we lose certain percent of the personnel we have here, we'll bring them in from, maybe it's a National Guard unit that's already been trained up and they know that they may have to send replacements. Something like that. It's never a, hey, pay somebody to come over and take your spot.
right. So, talking to that person specific, if he's coming home to you in December, that would mean the whole platoon is, or the whole, I, yeah, platoon is
Unit.
one, right? Yeah, unit is coming home as one. And they all fly on those big airplanes that are big enough to carry army tanks and, you know, Humvees and all that stuff. Uh, they are not going to just fly one individual home and make you fill out a form to replace that one individual.
No, not at all. No. No.
And then, also as far as the leave is concerned, you guys earn so much leave depending on your rank and how long you've been there and stuff like that as well.
No.
No,
Nope. I'm glad you brought that up because that was one thing that I wanted to mention when we were talking about base pay and housing and all that stuff. It kind of goes exactly with that. And thank you for asking. Whether it's from E1, like I talked about, the scale goes from E1, which is private, to E9, which is sergeant major. It's the same on the officer side. They're just called O's. They'd be O1 to O9, lieutenants, captains, majors, blah, blah, blah. Every single person, rank, age, job, doesn't matter. If you are in the service, active duty, you earn 30 days of leave a year. Every month, you earn 2.5 days of leave.
Okay.
And then we refer to that as days accrued. I don't know why. That's one of those words I don't get even as an adult. But you have accumulated these amount of days of leave. You've earned that much leave. It's 30 days a year. Every year you earn 30 days of leave. And then that's a whole other thing is when you can take it, this and that. It would typically be if you're in a unit and you're in the States, say that you're training for deployment, you're deploying in X amount of months or whatever. If you're in the States during the holidays, uh, everybody everybody loves Christmas and the
Right.
holidays, and service members are still human beings at the end of the day. They're human beings. We have faults, but everybody loves Christmas. So if you're stateside, say that, I spent several years where I didn't deploy because I was an instructor at Fort Benning or I was a recruiter. So for those 3 years of recruiting, I was here all the time. So we knew like, hey, uh, a few months early, like, hey, if you're taking Christmas leave, submit your leave. Because it's like called Christmas Exodus in the Army. It's kind of known like the leave block for Christmas is, these 2 weeks or whatever. And then you could submit for more or less on the left, whatever. It's case by case. But basically, that leave you can take when you submit for and it's authorized, which usually, unless it interferes with training schedule or deployment or something like that, it's usually authorized and you get passed. And there again, like I said, are leave blocks, things like that. You come back from deployment. There's post leave block, before you go. There's pre leave block. So it's 30 days every year, paid, right? I mean, it's paid.
Right. Right.
Same thing. It's you're still on active duty. You just don't have to go to work and you go wherever you want. Um, and then every federal holiday you get typically a 4-day pass. Marines, we called it a 96. Army, it's a 4-day. Every federal holiday, typically you're looking at Friday and Monday off. So those are always great. You get a ton of time off. It sucks when you work a lot. You may work several days in a row or weekend here and there, but for the most part, you get a lot of time off.
Yeah. So, like this past weekend was Veterans Day, federal holidays. So y'all would have had a 4-day weekend if you were stateside.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, Dana.
But that's the thing is everybody gets the same amount of leave. Doesn't matter if you're the youngest dude in the Army or the oldest crusty, 60-year-old that's been in for 40 years. They all get 30 days.
Okay. That's where I was getting my state job mixed up with military because
Yeah. But active duty, yeah, that's just how it is. It's nice and easy.
well, I guess that makes sense, but that leave time is included in with your base pay. That's part of your base pay.
That's part of your entitlements.
Entitlements with the base
Yeah.
pay.
Yep. Yeah. You would get your LES every month, your leave and earnings statement. And I used to teach my younger guys how to read it because it's all the information you want on one sheet. And unless you know what you're looking at when you're younger and you don't care, you know what I mean? You're like, whatever, I know I'm getting paid. I can't wait to spend it. But then you get older and you start looking at it. It's got all of your entitlements, all of your deductions. So all the money that you're entitled to, whatever they deducted, your leave is on there, your accrued dates, how many you have, how many you've taken. And then if you're in the military's version of the 401k is called the TSP, the Thrift Savings Plan. That's your IRA in a sense, so that it gives you that in there. So it's all the information you need on that right there, but it's standard stuff.
Okay, we've got Ashley Mark down there. Ashley Mark, I want you to come and talk to somebody on this Gam Haters United Instagram messaging board or come to Facebook, and I will be there as soon as I'm done here, and I can talk to you there. And yes, they don't just text, they can do video calls when they are deployed. So Dustin can kind of touch on that right now too.
Sorry, I was writing something down I want to come back to. Say it one more time.
Okay, she was saying that she was told they could only text when they were deployed.
I thought I heard you right. I just want to make sure. Thank you. No, not at all. Because again, we all have most everybody this day has a computer. Our phones, like this phone, wouldn't necessarily work over there. My last deployment was to Afghanistan in 2019, so I'll just use that for example. But Iraq applies too, just the same. You have computers, you have Facebook and Instagram video. That's how I would talk to my kids. The app is the same on a computer, so you log into Facebook or Instagram and you can video chat with people, things like that. There are instances where that could go down, meaning the service, it would just go dark. Um, like if there's a death or something like that, they'll cut that out until the proper people have been notified. That way they're not getting it third hand or seeing it in the news or on Facebook or
Right.
something like that. But for the most part, I mean, from all the way back in the day in Cuba in 2000 when it was phone banks, so you had your phone card and your list of numbers, mom's number, best friend's number, girlfriend's number, blah, 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 blah. And you go down there and, back 25 years ago from that to now, it's no, now we still got a computer. They're going to rip you off with internet. Oh gosh, that's a racket over there. But there's internet that's a whole nother story. I could rant about that. But no, you typically, even in Iraq, in Afghanistan, we had internet where we were at. So I would see my kids just like you and I are talking, I mean, realistically, as much as I wanted to or I could. It was very easy.
But not while you were on duty, right?
Not while you're no, not while you're outside. Not to sound cheesy, but
Right.
just not while you're outside the wire. If you go out on a patrol or a mission or something like that, no, obviously not. Your phones and everything stay there in your room. But once you get back, yeah, once you're off and done and showered up and everything, I was doing two college classes and working out real hard in the whole CrossFit stuff. And I mean, I had plenty of time and to still talk to my kids and to update them. I'm writing a paper on this week or whatever. There's plenty of time to video chat with people. And if they are in a place like Syria or something like that where they're claiming it's too dangerous to video, then that's just totally false. Because if they are in Syria or some country like that doing cool guy stuff or they're in any danger to where they couldn't, that's completely false. I mean, it just sounds totally ridiculous to me, but I'm used
Right.
to the military. You know what I mean? But that's just one of those things that no, absolutely not. I
Well, if
mean,
they are, say, sent to a dangerous deployment, they're not going to be able to tell some stranger
right?
and sometimes not even family members where they are deploying to.
Yeah, uh, yeah, and those types of people aren't talking to love interests.
That's true.
They don't need anything from anyone outside of their world. They don't need to contact somebody to ask them to send them this, or hey, I need you to receive this and then send that, or hey, send me money or send me these. I'm trying to come home. No, the people that can't tell their family and friends what they're doing take their job seriously and they don't tell people, and they're not looking for love while they're doing that.
Well, good grief, they probably wouldn't have time to tell you the truth.
No, you don't want time nor and honestly the hassle.
Well, oh, and if you're on a dangerous mission, let's just put it this way: you're working a lot, you rest, and you sleep in between. You're not going to stay up for 8 hours texting or trying to video call or going on dating sites or social media looking for a soulmate. And you'll hear
Yeah.
me say some of this stuff kind of sarcastically because I don't believe in soulmates, probably because I've never found one. But that's okay. I don't believe you're going to find love online. It's something you're going to find face to face. And even video chat, you're not going to find that via video chat. You want to meet with that person. So if somebody's deployed and texting you, that's not going to be your soulmate, whether it's military, doctor, oil rig, or whatnot. But the dangerous mission thing, and another point with that, if they are on a dangerous mission, they do get a little bit higher paid for that, like hazard duty almost.
Thanks for coming back to that. Yes. Do you want me to elaborate on that? Okay. Thank you for bringing that back. Deployments are great for numerous reasons. Kind of one that we were talking about in there. Um, Deployments are easier. One, and kind of what we were just talking about, to where all the outside bull crap from the regular civilian life is cut out. It's back home. You don't have to deal with it. All you're dealing with is your world that's there. If you're a leader in any form, you're worried about you and your guys and what you're doing. You don't have the interferences, so you don't look for anything necessarily outside the circle. Again, just to reiterate that. But they're also great because you make a lot more money. You make a ton of money on deployments. I signed my first reenlistment in the Army while I was in Iraq because it's tax free.
Oh,
There's numerous things now. Don't quote me. I know a couple of them, but there's usually like 3 or 4 more entitlements in that LES, like I talked about, the leave and earning statement on your check stub. When you get into combat theater, Kuwait is a little different now, but there's like 4 or 5, can be up to 4 or 5 more entitlements. You get hazard pay. Um, if you have family, you get family set, which is family separation. You get a certain amount of money a month for being separated from your family. You get 3 or 4 or 5, and it's tax free. So you'd have some dudes that were just trying to catch
I
deployments.
um
Go ahead.
see, when I was looking at the DoD website again, that was another thing. It did mention that tax information, which it says is often overlooked as far as, you know, part of, you know, some type of incentive, or not really incentive. I don't think that's the right word, but with the tax, you're not paying like a normal civilian would.
You don't pay any taxes.
Okay.
That I had 2 Iraq deployments that were both 12 months long. Those were so fantastic because for a whole year you're making extra money. You're making extra money on top of not paying taxes.
And that can be a huge difference.
Oh my gosh, incredibly different. I mean, those were the best times in Afghanistan. I got my car paid off.
Oh,
You know, you set goals like that. Those are your times. That's why a lot of dudes would chase them. Deployments, trying to transfer from unit to unit to just stay deployed because it was tax free, and they were either banking or they were getting out of debt. You bank on deployments. It's
well,
fantastic.
and that makes perfect sense because, you know, I know some military people that are personnel that have actually like bought a vehicle, especially, you know, with those fancy, you know, lift trucks and all that, and then while they're gone they park it, but they get come back home and it's paid for.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can even buy vehicles and Harley Davidsons while you're on deployment. They have. I tell this. I kind of say this joke all the time, but it's true. I looked into buying a motorcycle 2 different times, and I ended up having my 2 boys, so I had to put the motorcycle aside. But I still remember this very vividly in Iraq the first time. So this is probably like 2008, 2009, and even then, Kuwait, big time. Kuwait is so built up now. That's like a
Right.
luxury place. But even in Iraq, there was the Harley dealership and I think some type of truck one, and the salesman there, civilian dude, you know what I mean? He's got the gig as a salesman there, and wherever you're at in Iraq, and you can look at buying them. Hey, we'll finance you, dude. It'll be at home waiting on you. So there's dudes make money on deployment. You're living good.
Well, and on top of that, some places, I don't know if Harley Davidson does it, give military discounts.
They do. That was one of those things I kind of had to smarten my ex-wife up to when we first got together. Coming from here, Alabama, actually, she moved to Fort Riley, Kansas with me. That's where I was stationed. And of course, she knew of the military, but had never lived in a military town and never had a direct relative that was military. So you have to smarten those people up, in a sense. It's like, hey, military towns are something different. You got to watch yourself in those places because the people that live and operate there, from the car salesman, man, to dry cleanings rack at their storage. I'm getting bent over backwards in my storage still at Fort Bragg because they know those are things that all those military members in the area need, so they're going to jack the prices up. So there's not a great love of the military per se, is why you get these fantastic military discounts on the big car dealership signs. Yes, they're going to, but they've already increased the price to where they can take it down, and they're not losing money and they're not helping you out. Military towns, you got to be careful in those
Well,
places.
yeah, thanks for saying that. Now, I do know that like you can take your DD 214 or papers when you're purchasing a home, you can get credit for interest rate or help with the down payment depending on the programs and stuff like that.
Yes, I bought my first house, actually my only house, not like I have bought a lot, but I bought my house in Fort Benning when I was there as an instructor through the VA home loan. And I remember thinking how easy it was. Even though my ex did all the footwork with the houses and stuff that we were going to look at, once we figured out, which one we're going with, then it was on me to do the packet for the VA home loan. It was thick, but I just remember I would sit on the couch and just kind of grind through it, and it wasn't that difficult and it was a good process. And I'll be doing that again, hopefully first quarter of this coming calendar year. I'll be buying a house
I
again.
hope so.
But if you look for it, I'm glad you brought this up too. Even veterans don't, and active duty guys, there are so many things. They're not entitlements, but benefits. There are so many benefits that active duty guys and veterans are eligible for if they just looked into it. I'm talking to myself too, but there are so many things out there that if you look, in states vary too. So if a vet wants to look into what he can kind of help himself with where he's at now, look at the things that you're eligible for, because if you're really looking to it, there are tons of programs for small business. I think you mentioned that. Home loans, there's a ton of things out there that you're entitled to, and guys don't take the time to look it up or even use them. So they do take care of you quite a bit as well. It's, it is a two-way street. So if you look for it, the benefits can be there.
So if you do your part, they're going to do their part.
Not,
Or let's say
yes.
they have their programs, but you have to do your part. You have to participate in that.
Yes, and you have to deal with them getting the process done. I'm not saying it's easy. Like I spent 2 hours on the phone today just dealing with, dental and vision, getting enrolled and everything. But yeah, as long as you deal with it, it's not going to be painless, but it's there.
Right. Like I say, I worked for the state, and so some of the government benefits that you could get, you had to go that little bit of extra paperwork, because everything has to be in triplicate, and then plus they've
Yes.
got extra questions. So if you do put in the work, you can get some benefits out once you're out of the military, or even sometimes while you're in it. And yeah, you mentioned going to doing college classes while you were deployed. You had time to do some online ones. If I remember right, some classes can be paid for by the military. I don't know about all.
Getting your bachelor's degree, like I got my bachelor's and I don't owe a dime. I used, while you're active, you have what's called tuition assistance, or TA. I think it was 4,200, but let's call it $4,000. Now that is an entitlement. Again, when you're younger, you don't care. You just want to party, so I
Right.
squandered a lot of it, but you are, no kidding, entitled to, as an active duty member, $4,000 a year for classes. So I applied for that and I started taking one class at a time. Right as I was leaving recruiting and I was PCSing, or permanent change of station, to Fort Bragg in 2018, I started one class at a time. It was pretty painless. I picked my university, and then with Go Army Ed is who you go through. So you do have to deal with those. You create all this stuff in Go Army Ed. You say, hey, this is the university I want to go to. Cool. And then they pay. The classes I was taking was 750, I think, every 2 months. I was doing 8-week classes. Once I stepped it up though to two classes, now that doubles the money. That's 1,500 a month. I burned through that $4,000 real quick, but oddly enough, I was eligible to get federal grants. I got the Pale grant. I got other funding to where I didn't have to pay anything. So I'm not positive on the GI Bill yet. I mean, I still have it. It's changed a bunch of times. I'm thinking about going back and finishing my master's, so I'd have to learn about what the GI is going to do for that. I couldn't speak on post yet, but while you're active, you got $4,000 every year just sitting there for you to spend on college. Now, I learned this lesson the hard way. You have to pass your class,
Hmm.
or you have to pay that money back to the Army.
That
So
makes
remember
sense.
about I talked about earlier, if you owe them money, they're just going to take it from your
Right.
paycheck. I may have put too many things on my plate, trying to be too ambitious first Iraq deployment. And I wasn't mentally ready at the time to start taking classes, and I took one and I failed, and I had to pay that money back. But I did, and it was a good lesson several years down the road. It was a hard lesson because that's $750 out of my pocket, but it's there if you want to use it. And if you do and don't use it right, they're going to take it back.
Which again makes sense. So I know we're kind of getting off topic as far as deployment and stuff like that, but actually, I'm kind of curious about some of that stuff myself. But I was aware of some of the benefits that you can get, especially the VA loans for home and business. Um, but let's go back to deployment. You talked about the loss of a piece of equipment, so a gun. So yes, that is serious business, and if it's not found on base, what what goes on there?
Good question. I remember a few throughout my career. Anytime we ever lost a piece of equipment per se, it was during a mission out in Iraq, and it was one of our Ravens, which is a drone, kind of it's not huge, but it's a smaller drone that you'd send up. You can control remotely. We train guys at the lower level that could do that. One of those went down in a field in Iraq, and we went to look for it because we were out. We spun up QRF, which is Quick Reaction Force, just another group of guys, because the fields were huge. They're farmers and they're growing stuff, and that was an all day affair, and we ended up finding like after we let them knew a little more forcefully, like, listen, people, we're not leaving until we get this thing back. So you can keep messing around if you want to, but we're not going anywhere until we get this Raven because we know where it went down. Then eventually they produce a piece of it that had the serial number on the bird. So we didn't get it back. But I remember that one. That was kind of different. But if you lose it in training, it may take several hours, but usually it is eventually found. I can't think of a case where it wasn't eventually recovered, because when that happens, you do weapons accountability all the time, especially even from the big leaders up to small unit leaderships, especially if you're like a team leader or squad leader, because you got a bunch of young dummies. You got, I love them to death, but you got three 18-year-olds that are running around with a M4, a pistol, nods that are your night vision. They got a ton of stuff that's on them that's expensive. And then as a leader, you're responsible. The little dummy loses it. So you're constantly checking sensitive, we call it SI, sensitive items check, especially on deployment,
Mm-mm.
because you have to travel with that stuff, because it needs to be, when sensitive items are, when you're not using them, they get secured in the arms room or like the armory, and they get locked up there, accounted for, everything like that, because you have a armory guy that works there. You turn them into, like, it's not formal, but it's formal. You get accountability. Nobody goes anywhere until every single piece of serialized gear is accounted for. And if that's when you realize that it's gone, then where was the last place you had it, type of thing. And then, like, okay, everybody mount up, we're going back to the range, if that's where it was lost, or something like that. It can shut down the post, and then it becomes what we would call, hands across America. That's where it's like, all right, line up and then start walking, and you better be looking down at your feet until it's found. Those types of things. Keep it simple, stupid. You know what I mean?
Right,
um,
right.
I don't remember one of those where anything's ever been like found off post or anything like that, because it's very rare, unless you get into things where there's like supply guys or arms room dudes doing like really illegal stuff and selling them. You know what I mean? But as far as a dude to lose it or like it gets stolen from his room, no, it didn't. Um, in the States, it wouldn't, because your weapon's going to be in the arms room. You're not going to have it. You're not allowed to have it in your barracks room. And if you're on deployment, you do have to sleep with your weapon if you can't secure it. Because I've slept with my weapon a lot of times. You put it in a sleeping bag and it's there with you. You do that in case you cannot turn it in the arms room and they can't be double locked. Like, that's just standard practice. That's Army. Can't think of the right word. Not doctrine, but that's just standard practice, where that's how it will be done, or you'll be in trouble.
Right. So you're responsible for your equipment, period.
Yes.
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 Which honestly makes sense. And some of your 18-year-olds are just not taught responsibility. So yeah, you're talking about, your little dummies.
Even older people, though, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I'll share time. that I kind of messed up. There was no incident from it, but even I was a staff sergeant at the time. I as a at a point where I should have well known better. It was just a brain fart. So you know what I mean? It happens, and we dealt with it how we would otherwise. And I wasn't punished per se, but I just had to check in with my sensitive items more frequently than normal for about a week. But that's standard stuff. Is like with SI is such a serious thing that you do checks even in Iraq in the barracks. You have to send your checks up to higher like a lot. Again, depending on where you are, but at least twice a day that everything's accounted for. Any sensitive items missing, nope, all accounted for. Now you can get in trouble for sending out false reports, but that's a different thing. But to lose something and then say I've got to pay for this, um, you know, no, they're gonna take it out of your backside.
Well, I know uh, Cindy started mentioning that too, and we were talking about that in the scam that I was in. Okay, I say I didn't lose, but this was one thing that did not make sense. He did lose his rifle, and he showed me a picture of him all taped up and kind of messed up a little bit, and the other guys in his unit, because they all had to go hunting for it, had punished him by taping him up and roughing him. um I don't know if that's done or not, but that was used in my scam. If it's done, I don't know if it's really talked about.
That's the thing. Now, uh, it it those things can happen. Yes, but again, because things like that, even back, I remember hazing becoming a bigger thing where it's like you better not, and they were really dropping the hammer, so you had to get away from any of this crazy stuff. But we would still, we would tape guys up for their birthdays. Our lieutenant, who we loved to death, we in Iraq, we taped him to a cot. You know what I mean? Hung him upside down. Um, but in the manner that you're talking about, if anybody's watched, A Few Good Men or Full Metal Jacket, back in the day, there were things called blanket parties, or Code Red from A Few Good Men. Now that's not unheard of. You know what I mean? To say that that's done, but I tell you what is not normal, or for me per se, if I lost my weapon and then my fellow teammates showed that they didn't appreciate that and wanted to find a way to help me remember, by doing whatever, that's gonna teach me that lesson. But the last thing on earth that I'm ever gonna do is share that picture of me with my hands taped up with anyone, especially a chick that I'm trying to woo or want me to think that I'm cool. You know what I mean? I don't want anybody to see that picture, the fact that my hands are all taped up because I lost my weapon. Any soldier at any level, that's almost like blasphemy. It's just like that's too far in a sense. Like, hey, we can do good ribs and you can make fun of me for a little bit, but you don't want people to see it because you don't. That's something you don't
Well,
share.
yeah, especially with somebody that you're trying to court. So,
I'm gonna send you a picture where I'm looking cool with my gun.
right,
I'm gonna have
right.
I'm gonna have double guns. I'm gonna show you the bodies that I'm gonna stack. You know what I mean? Not like this.
Well, it was kind of more than just that. I mean, they had really wrapped him.
I yeah, I may have been a part of things that were quite more elaborate than that, but we'll keep it PG.
Yeah. But I hadn't thought of that. I wish I would have kept that picture, because now where I'm at the point where I've learned, I could have done a reverse image search and seen where that actually may have come from, because it was probably photoshopped. But Mel's mentioning we need to watch our time, because so we're getting really close.
I I have a couple things that I do want to mention. Yeah, I saw that. Going back to medical coverage and things like that,
Okay.
there's something that's called the EFMP, that's Exceptional Family Member Program. I don't have any personal experience with it, but I've had guys that had kids in it. Exceptional Family Member Program is if you have a dependent son, daughter, whatever, that is special needs or anything of that matter, then there are, I forget how many again, because I've never personally done it, but I know there's numerous. So remember I mentioned earlier I was PCSing, my permanent change of station. If you are a service member with somebody that's in the EFMP, you can only go to certain places that have the facilities for that exceptional family member to ensure that they're getting the care that they need. In there's numerous locations, but it's like, okay, if your child has this, then we can go here and keep you in the EFMP. It's additional support for that family member.
That which makes sense, which is another good thing about military medical and the various things that they do provide for the military members and their families.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And it's come quite a ways. And then even with, I can speak on getting out, and retiring and then going through the VA process. Because you used to hear horror stories back in the day, with the VA, with the
right,
skeleton sitting in the VA still waiting for treatment. I heard from a lot of my buddies that got out before me and were going through the same thing. They said like, hey, it's better than it used to be. You do get help. They want you to get everything that you need. And that's what I experienced going through it too. Again, it's just like you have to do your part, which may be a little more than theirs, but as long as you do what you have to do, it wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad process. This one I really want to mention. This is kind of off topic, but one of the latest ploys that the scammers are loving to do and seeming to have pretty good success with is, like, if I'll post a picture, there's a couple recently, like the Pete Rose ball, and then another picture. There's like 29 comments on, I think, on the Pete Rose one. People like, oh, cool, 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 cool. All these different people chiming in. The scammers that are very close to my name and familiar with, it looks like my page, they'll go on those comments. Let's say that you posted on there, and this may have happened. I don't know.
it
You're like,
has
hey,
happened
cool.
on your page.
Right. There, you may even just chime in like, hey, Pete Rose, cool, my dad loved him, or whatever.
Right,
Now that scammer is going to reply to you and that comment saying, hey, can we private chat?
exactly.
If we were to look, I think we got all those dudes blocked. But if you would have looked a few days ago or last week at all of those, hey, do you want a private chat? Do you want a private chat? Do you want a private chat? They'll just do it to every single person that's commented. So if you go and comment on somebody's stuff and somebody contacts you through your comment, that is a huge red flag that is not that person.
Yeah, we even get those on our page. Like Austin Scott Miller is on there all the time, and it will be all these flowery words and kiss emojis and all that, and they'll just copy and paste to several of the comments
Yeah.
just on one
Mm-hmm.
post. And so I know Annie is really vigilant and brain fart. There's another one that helps on the page too, but when they're asleep, I kind of watch too because Austin Scott Miller has been very busy.
I mean, I went and looked at that one, and they even said that to my cousin. You know what I mean? She had popped in. They're like, "Oh, hey, cool." And then it's like, come on, man. you know, Ugh. But that's one of their latest favorites to do.
And
Yes,
you're
they
right,
are.
Carla. They're fishing for victims. So,
Absolutely.
uh, yeah, Kathy mentioned. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. Ilse or anyway, she helps with the page. She's
Nice.
from another country, and she's really good about helping Annie with the page, especially when Annie pops off here and there. Because again, Austin Scott Miller's been really busy. He's the one I've noticed the most.
Yeah.
But I also notice when somebody comments and they tag, say Austin Scott Miller, or they tag you, um, it's almost like they're tagging the variables of the name. When they're replying to you, they're also tagging the variables, or they might put a hashtag in there that belongs to your hashtags, and it
Yeah.
will tag the scammers too. So it actually gives the scammers, something to look at. Yeah, Austin Scott Miller, when he's not up a tree, he's on the page. So
yeah.
I get tickled at some of these ladies because that tree story with Austin Scott Miller, up a tree, and he had to wanted one of the victims to contact Amazon, get him a satellite phone, and have it delivered to him so that he could send a GPS to his unit as to where he was at.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I mean, it was really an elaborate story that made no sense whatsoever. But he was hiding up a poetry from the Taliban's. Of course, they put the S on the end of that. So you'll have to have Ruth tell you that story. She tells it so well.
I can't wait for us to talk about that story.
Okay, I'll mention it to her so that you guys can.
That's a good one. We'd be on another hour if we started dissecting that one. But I just want to say I don't want to speak for all the guys, but I'm sure that they wouldn't disagree with me. But for me, at least, I try to tell the truth every time. We appreciate so much what you guys do. Everyone involved with Scam Haters, you guys are fantastic. I mean, I never thought of myself as a victim until several years ago. Ruth pointed it out, and I was like, oh, holy crap, I guess I am. But I'm so used to dealing with it every day. But I really appreciate the fact that you care about both sides and how prompt you are with everything. There's never a question of, oh, well, when they see it. No, whenever I report a fake post, it's usually within 60 seconds. Doesn't matter what time of day, because I'll all night or whatever, random times. But it's like, removed, thank you, within 60 seconds. And it's like, you guys are awesome. You're doing great work. I just appreciate everything that you guys do.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that. We always appreciate the
Absolutely.
kind words, especially after some of the flack we get. So, but actually, we enjoy helping, everyone. And I especially feel bad for, the photo victims like you are, because, a regular victim is going to be victimized hopefully only once. But every time you are contacted or somebody, comments on your account or, harasses you, whatever, you're victimized over and over and over and over again. If they contact your family or, a significant other or whatnot, they're victimized, which again, you're victimized with that too. So,
I don't know if we'll get cut off. It's 8:02, but I'll, unless you're pressed for time, I'll just kind of, nothing long, but I don't know if Ruth told you, I can't say exactly, but, like I mentioned, I'm used to dealing with this type of scam, the romance scam stuff with you guys every day, like literally without fail, replying to something, answering someone, no, I'm sorry, it's not me. Very used to that. A week or so ago, um, I, I don't know how to put it, but I had an law enforcement basically stopped by my house.
oh,
I
yeah.
can't, you know what I mean? I don't really want to go any further than that, but they stopped here looking for me to talk to me. And we quickly established that, hey, I'm not that guy, and that, yes, I am being used in a scam. But this is totally outside the Scam Haters world. And it's much bigger. And according to them that I talked to, that's in charge of everything, they're aware of this, is very aware of this and everything that we do. And we're like, hey, you guys are doing awesome stuff. But just be aware that the threat is also picking up here in the United States. Yes, the Nigerian romance scammers, but you're getting more real world stuff. It's where they're using now my pictures. I'm having to deal with this outside just this little circle, which was kind of like, holy crap.
Right,
When they
right.
stop by to talk to you, it's like, whoa. I told my sister this. I'll close with this, and I apologize. I'm going to drop the S word.
Go ahead.
my sister's my sister can be very animated and dramatic from time to time. But I'm telling her this, and she just Googles my name like Dustin Cap scam, and looking at it and going through like, holy crap, Dustin says you scammed this guy for blah blah blah. He's like, you have scammed the shit out of people, like because they'll go on there, they'll use. She asked me, the first thing was, are you associated with email Dustin Caps like 634? And I'm like, no, Trisha, you know this. I'm not at all. But people will report the emails that are used to scam them, and this is big time bucks. I'm talking like thousands and thousands. This is big time money that people are losing from this little punum thinking it's me, I guess. So it's more to deal with, which is awesome.
Well, I'm going to Google you now. I'm curious.
It's crazy though. I did a little bit, and she was gonna email me. I'm gonna send you this. I'm gonna send you this. I'm like, Trisha, I don't want to see it. I know I believe what you're saying, and I know because I deal with this every day. I believe that. I don't want to see it again necessarily, but there's some big ones on there, and it's just, I don't know.
Well,
It is what it is.
let's kind of cut off, and I want to say thank you for chatting with me. I had a good time talking to you. We always have a little bit of fun.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for taking the time.
All right, and until next time, probably with Ruth next time.
Yeah, I think we're going to be going every Tuesday now, and something like Ruth and then maybe you, if you're available for Tuesdays, just go Ruth and you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
All right, but thanks, Dustin.
Let me see if I can get a thumbs up in there if it'll work on this. I get it in StreamYard, but there
Yeah.
it is. This one's even cooler. I'll leave you with these. Come on. We're going to get an explode. There it is. I'll
Oh,
leave you with that.
wow. I love that.
Thanks for humoring me. All right. Thanks for joining, everybody. We'll talk
All
to you next Tuesday.
right. Thanks,
All right.
Dustin. Bye.
Bye.